when somebody like yourself, Sifu, and me, we've identified our passion, number one, and we've lived it. And now we are creating an environment where we can nurture other people along, because I only instruct people on things that I have felt personally and been through. And what ends up happening is sometimes people, they don't know exactly what they want on their physical plane. But what I try to point out to them, it's almost like their diet. It's not what you're eating, it's what you're not eating on a regular basis. That sustainability and realizing the whole, like the team, or the whole of an individual's life, you can compartmentalize and be there. But sometimes, and I've experienced this myself in my own career, that you can get caught up in the excitement of what your position entails and what can deliver and the attention you're getting. And sometimes you can lose sight of the overall big picture in terms of long-term longevity, sustainability, and those people around you. So that sustainability, I find it very fascinating, because a lot of people I work with in my fitness business, I specialize, when I say that I'm the balance professor, a lot of people want to stand on one foot in front of me. Oh, I got balance. I'm like, no, that's not, that's the superficial stuff. It's the balance of power.
Hello there, folks. Sifu Slim here, sifuslim.com. Please take a moment right now down below. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know that appreciative of what we're doing today, which is bringing you information, connection, hopefully a vital resource to you in your walk on this planet. And that's what it's all about. But we're not only going to walk, and we're going to climb, and we're going to crawl, because we're both fit by nature, by training, and by coaching. So I'm going to bring in right now Greg Jankowski, who's calling in from Dayton, Ohio. He's the balance professor, and he's a very interesting guy. He's got a background in art, in media, many other things. And we'll let Greg tell us a little bit about himself.
Thank you for having me. I feel I'm honored, because this is actually my first podcast as a guest. So thank you very much. I have my own podcast, Imagine Fitting In, which you most graciously were a guest with mine. So I appreciate that. And Greg Jankowski. I was born in Dayton, Ohio. I was an artist. I describe myself as essence as an artist with a passion for fitness. As Sifu mentioned, my real, probably true essence was when I was very young. We talk about, like, what you wanted to be when you were young and that kind of childhood dream. I think I probably always wanted to be Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin and sing in that group, because my buddy wanted to be Jimmy Page. But that being said, my art evolved in, my father was a real big influencer for me. He saw my creativity. I started drawing. He gave me, let me shoot my first photograph with an old Browning camera, where you look down and everything's upside down. You have to try to learn that composition. And I was fascinated ever since, grabbing visual images. So today compared to today, it's almost like we have so much coming at us in terms of media and images and thoughts and kind of flowing. It kind of got me to a point where I actually ended up going into advertising back in the day. And I soon realized by the time I was about 26 or 27, something was not quite right in terms of using my creative energies to sell all the things I really didn't identify with. Really poor food, alcohol, cigarettes, blah, blah, blah. So I had kind of like an epiphany at an age where I had been exercising and working out since I was about 18. And it took me to a point where the one day I was laying there in bed, and I always bring this up to people when if you had all the money in the world that you didn't need, that wasn't an issue, what would be the first thing that you'd want to do? Say I won the lotto, I've got all this money. What was the first thing you'd do when you put your feet on the ground out of bed? And it was basically helping people. And at an early age, I was probably about 7 years old. I remember my dad putting me up on a drawing table and letting me draw on a very big, tall chair. It made me feel important. And he allowed me to just draw. And I can remember I was writing stories as well to my drawings. And I remember looking out of the same window that I actually gaze out of now today, my childhood window, and remember saying, I'm going to help people. So fast forward to today, to meeting my good friend Sifu. I got into the fitness industry 32 years ago. I am as the balance professor. I am all things expert on balance, and that's mainly balance of power. And I've come to realize that that skill set includes communication, the balance of power for me to communicate a message. Basically, I start on the physical plane, and then people make their own discoveries on an emotional, a spiritual plane, and purpose plane. And so I think we have a lot of things in common, Sifu, in terms of your inspiration, your fortitude, your focus, and your delivery and your passion, and just trying to inspire people to realize that they have all the tools, or we love sharing the tools that we've kind of created in our ability to have them discover more of their overall human potential.
Human potential, that's a fascinating subject. And I've been looking at that, and especially athletic potential, because what I'm finding in my research and in my conversations with athletes, coaches, doctors, sisters and brothers of athletes, these types of things, that the human potential is, they're gearing it up wrong, perhaps. They're gearing it up on outcome of event instead of outcome of sustainability for the athlete, the team, the relationship between the coach, the parents, and the athlete. If it's a young athlete, or the coach, the athlete, and the significant others in that person's life. And they're, in my opinion, gearing it up too much on this Sunday's game and the finals of the state football or the division championship, this type of thing. The big game, as opposed to looking at life as a play, a place to play, a place to do your art, and sustain that ability to the best of your ability throughout the course of your life, so that you're not limping at age 15 or 85 or whatever it is that you did once upon a time that created some permanent damage that was perhaps unnecessary. For example, playing when you're already injured and damaging that bone, that ligament, that tendon more, and having that transfer into your mind so that your mind is damaged too. And now you've got trauma in the mind, body, and spirit, and you sort of resent the fact that you went so hard, and you feel silly having done that at an age where you were not making $10 million or something that would allow you to retire. So over to Greg for some of his thoughts on sustainability versus the high performance trained athlete.
You know, that's interesting you say that, because I look at from a couple of different vantage points. So every Sunday, we know football is the American game, so to speak. It's like, it's super popular, and there's this level of, it's all obviously male dominated, male aggressiveness. It's almost like every week we get to see a new battle. So this is a justifiable celebration that we in America, we have the freedom to go into battle and kind of organize with some character, some rules. And all of a sudden we're going to go in and we're going to be the champions for this weekend or this year until somebody else comes along. In that, I think that when you talk about athleticism and physical activity, I think in my experience, we've seen the art of sports medicine when it's delivered in educating these young athletes, and to really think about, any really seasoned athlete, if they're not focusing on their mobility and their ability to react and adapt, again, it kind of varies, right? So imagine, this is interesting, because in life, it's not all that, it's almost like that. You go out there and you're going to the next game of the day and you're trying to do the best you can. And then you have a certain amount of teammates and players involved with you around this that are your affiliated with in terms of like a work environment. I'm just putting it to the everyday guy. And then, so you have these athletes that have, one's the lineman, and he needs to be so big. He needs to have certain skills. You have a linebacker. He needs to be almost just as big and quick and be able to react instantaneously. And then you have those cornerbacks, those safeties that are a completely different animal from extreme from the linemen in terms of modalities and their focus. But ultimately, like in life, right, we all need to be team-oriented in that communication and to try to, like the Sifu, that sustainability and realizing the whole, like the team or the whole of an individual's life. You know, you can compartmentalize and be there, but sometimes, and I've experienced this myself in my own career, that you can get caught up in the excitement of what your position entails and what can deliver and the attention you're getting. And sometimes you can lose sight of the overall big picture in terms of long-term longevity, sustainability, and those people around you. So I'm often people, and I'm not sure if this is something that I've learned to try to counter and adapt to, but for a long time, I was completely underconfident about what I was doing. But I had a passion because I found that physical plane, I dominated it. I figured out how to do it rudimentary early when we talk about bodybuilding and strength and raw look or whatever. And then I had the good fortune of being coached and mentored by professional sports medicine doctors and athletic trainers, and just understand that your body is like that team where you have a symphony of muscles to be in tune with, involved with, and to continue to always almost underlying know that it's there working for you. Excuse me. And not to underestimate any part of the big picture of your physiology. So you're not dominating and spending so much time on one aspect of your game, and to have a certain look. So that sustainability, I find it very fascinating because a lot of people I work with in my fitness business, I specialize, when I say that I'm the balance professor, a lot of people want to stand on one foot in front of me. Oh, I got balance. I'm like, no, that's not, that's the superficial stuff. It's the balance of power. So I break that down and I literally have them say, okay, how long can you be strong? And we're going to get you where you want to go, maybe cosmetically, but you have to understand there's a cost if you go running into something and you're not quite clear you've heard about things. And that's why I left advertising, because they were spitting out these terms and these things that motivate you to go do something, but never really, if you didn't take time to really truly be shown by, little insight. Everybody's got a profession and a passion, right? A skill set. So I believe that when somebody like yourself, Sifu, and me, we've identified our passion, number one, and we've lived it. And now we are creating an environment where we can nurture other people along, because I only instruct people on things that I have felt personally and been through. And what ends up happening is sometimes people, they don't know exactly what they want on their physical plane. But what I try to point out to them, it's almost like their diet. It's not what you're eating, it's what you're not eating on a regular basis. So I'm a real big neural guy, so I teach movement. I try to teach people the importance of a balanced posture, that framework, that position to say, okay, I know where all the pieces, I know where all my fellow players need to be and what their role is. And there's a certain sense of, what's the word I'm looking for? Managing in terms of how you access your physiology to complement your mental game and fortitude to take on challenges in your life, both physical and all the planes, spiritual and emotional.
Wonderful, Greg. I appreciate all those well thought out, intriguing concepts that you brought to light here. I want to keep on the path of philosophical discussion with you, if you don't mind. Is that okay with you?
That's a pleasure.
So I jotted down the purpose of life, and I have a two-sentence answer. I wrote, it's hard to say what the purpose of life is, but we can discuss how to function despite the challenges. A more palatable conversation in question might take up this question: how to live a good life? And the answer for me is do the right thing. Now, that's going to unpeeling an onion. What is the right thing? And that's something we could add a few things on. But let me know if this purpose of life, that's doing the right thing, living a good life is doing the right thing. The purpose of life is doing the right thing. And over to Greg for his thoughts.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of talk, and we mentioned this in the my podcast when I had you on a guest. So, doing the right thing. I think that if you're as lucky to have some foundational kind of framework in terms of your parents and your surroundings and your environment and the wherewithal to get that put across to you in terms of what's right and what's wrong, that's one thing. Because, when you have chaos when you're young, it's kind of difficult to stay away from having a chaotic life. So I find that for myself a true blessing. That being said, I was blessed with that situation. And I have to say I was blessed even more with a father that was both creative, logical, constantly curious, and a self-read man that didn't expect anybody to tell him what he should be thinking about or how he should operate. While you go on and everybody has to operate within the system of what we call humanity. And then God love us, and we're so blessed to be in the United States, one of the greatest countries in the world, that we have the idea of free will and practice it on all extreme. We can just do anything we want. It's just amazing. That being said, I think when you say doing the right thing, well, I know from personal experience that I caught myself not doing the right thing for me when I found myself using my precious creative energies to sell products and services and things that I didn't believe in or I didn't use myself. And that takes me back to for a reflection at that time when I was questioning if I still wanted to be in the commercial advertising world. Well, during that process, I discovered my true physical essence by working out, exercising, gaining some power and confidence, and understanding that my potential in my mind to create the world that I like to live within, if I can't find it outside of me. My father always said, life's tough, right? The world in which we engage with our society, it can be tough. There's challenges. Every day is a different day, but you can create your own, I would say, precious world to an extent of being able to really truly identify how to nurture yourself. And then if you're nurturing yourself, I believe you're going to have the capability to either definitely do the right thing ultimately, because you're doing the right thing for yourself, and you're not going to throw something on somebody else that you're not doing to yourself. And you can see where that's a conundrum. But doing the right thing, I found it's sort of like that classic question of what's the meaning of life? And I throw that around with my guy, Joseph Campbell. He always would, the big thing that stood out to me, he would say, the question is not what's the meaning of life, it's what is your experience of being alive? For all the things that you have capable and available to you to make the most out of. Again, right? Everybody has challenges. There's no such thing as a perfect world. But to understand, I've come to a point in my life that I have lived a certain level of physical plane. I've come to understand a certain degree of my emotional plane, which through circumstances, I had experiences that I couldn't comprehend. And then I get to be older and start to comprehend. And then you begin to decide, like you said, Sifu, doing the right thing. And if I do the right thing for me, people see that. They feel that. They can't help to be inspired and attracted to it. And I never once I kept, even though it was stressful for me, to break out of something rigid like, oh, I'm supposed to go this commercial advertising route to make money and have a certain level of financial success, and that I should be, I'm not doing right unless I can have that apartment in the high-rise apartment and blah, 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 and these cars and stuff, as opposed to what was truly important. And I found through my 61 years of existence on the planet that my purpose, if I have purpose, a genuine purpose that has fueled me to make those right decisions, to do the right thing, I've come to understand that it is like an artful exchange of communication to inspire people around me. So my clients, when they come to see me, sometimes they don't know what they want. They definitely know, either consciously or unconsciously, what is their burden, what is something they may be carrying that they shouldn't be carrying, or they haven't figured out how to, like, manipulate the backpack, right? Oh, I gotta carry this. I can never get rid of this. It's got to make the best of it. And there's a certain level of acceptance. So I find myself probably more busy and in demand of my services than ever before. And I think that's twofold. I think it's a sign of the times that we're living in. From this, I was feeling it back before computers came in. It was happening. And now it's just like this. Computers came in and it's gone boom. It's out of control in terms of people kind of bumping into each other. And they get so many of these messages, and there's no imagination. There's no time for them to just have a quiet thought. And you get so conditioned, if that's all you know is these messages bombarding you, and you're like, oh, what's it like to be completely alone? And that can be shocking for people. So I myself, right? When COVID hit, we all know this. I was just talking about this on my previous guest in my podcast. You didn't have an option to consider how you're going to feel if you got isolated. You can't go see people. So there's a lot of people that really had a super hard time with it. Some people couldn't do it at all, and they just broke. Some people reinvented themselves. So from that standpoint of doing the right thing, Sifu, in my heart, when I know I'm taking care of myself, being honest with myself and the people around me, then it's kind of a magical place. And when you can't find joy, I tend to look inward. I create enough of my inner joy to sustain myself for the next challenge or for the next event and purpose, what I consider my adventure. And then it's only worthwhile when I can share it, and I can bring that light and joy and a sense of, I think when you say do the right thing, I think purpose is just critical in terms of how you make those decisions, when and where.
Perfect, Greg. Human integrity came to my mind when you were speaking. So we've got human performance. What is performance without human integrity? Well, it's an empty human performance. Doping in the Tour de France, doping in anything. Having a competitor who's sick or injured and taking advantage of that and clobbering them and smashing them into the dirt, these types of things. The Spartan warrior winning at all costs. Where's the integrity in that when you go from age 20 to age 80 and you've had 60 years to think about it? If you are a person developing your integrity, you may naturally have trauma about those poor deeds that you did along the way. Now, part of living is learning from our mistakes. So that's wonderful. So you make a mistake, you learn from it. You did the wrong thing. Doing the right thing, therefore, is learning from those mistakes so that you're not just acting and reacting constantly without any circumspection, without any open heart, open mind, mindfulness, without your soul being involved, without any type of asking forgiveness or forgiving yourself for the bad actions that you did. That's part of learning. And I'm going to hear Greg respond to that.
Yeah, I think, I found my own personal journey when I had that realization that it was from a previous relationship. I believe I was totally in love with the woman at the time. My emotional development, my true essence of where I was at that time at a young 28 years old. I was actually from 23 to 28. And what came about was there's a certain level of exchange and growth when you spend time with individuals and relationships and all that kind of thing. And it come to realize, like, I love this person so much that I was able to consider sacrificing my true identity to try to hold on to something that was, I don't know if you can literally just straight up call that codependency. But there was such a love and heartfelt appreciation for that shared experience that I was going to get ready to sacrifice myself for a potential us. And we both realized later, as much as everybody that knew us thought we made this great couple, we were perfect for each other. But what ended up happening is I consider it almost like two ships that, relationship is like two ships that pass by in the ocean, and you're like, hey, say you come up and you come alongside and you're like, oh, you want to tie up and we're going to float in this ocean. We don't know where it's going to take us exactly, but these are some rough waters and there's some calm waters. We can have a good time, whatever. And I use that analogy because after so long, sometimes either one or both need or want to, like, I need to untie. So in terms of personal development, my own story of realizing that actually realizing basically what I shouldn't do, it still didn't give me a perspective quite yet of what I should do and what was keeping me from doing what I should do, that right thing in terms of my overall for my sustainability, my longevity. And it's sometimes we have these, I don't know if you want to call them hidden shadows or monkeys on our back, or this little, the little good devil, little bad devil talking in your ear, and what makes you avoid certain things. And sometimes it takes a very sustained, either chaotic experience that you don't think is chaotic, or just one dramatic shift to shuffle those off and clear the house and say, like, okay, who am I? I had that kind of moment. And then I had that moment at the time when I realized I shouldn't marry her. I care for her deeply, but I care more about both of our individual wellness to not try to, almost like take advantage. So then my personal journey was I was off distracted, trying to convince myself that I was good enough, worthy enough with both my new travel career path and as a person being able to be justifiably a qualified candidate to be a partner, a life partner. And so when you have all these expectations, it's one thing to kind of have expectations and try to think of imagining what you like your life to be. And then the reality of the people in front of you that actually you're seeing. I truly believe, Sifu, that when we have these interactions with our people in our lives, that like me talking with you today and to your listeners, is that you are a backboard for me. I get to speak what I know is true, and I get to hear it myself backed up into my ears. I'm saying it out loud. So I believe that's one of the most powerful things that awareness is, that with, say, like COVID, right? Some people don't realize how codependent they are. They don't realize how scary it is to almost just be alone in your own thoughts. But if you've never been forced to, and that's what COVID almost did to a lot of people, and it changed this whole dynamic of how we get comfortable and interacting with each other. So everything was like a lot more like critical for a while. And, it did a lot of, I think COVID did two things. I think one, it should make us aware of how humanity, our existence on this planet, let alone your country, your state, or your city, or your town, the need for humility and almost a purpose. When I was stuck in with COVID, I went within and I realized that, yes, I do have certain set skills that I was putting my attention to distract myself from the reality of not being able to go out and do the things that I thought I should be doing exactly then. And it allowed you to unfold some discoveries, both scary, both fulfilling, both mysterious, and just unlocking doors. But on the other side, those people who were, let's just face it, some people just kind of in a fragile state, rolling along every day, and something like that hits, and it's just beyond comprehension. So we see we see suicide rates go up. We see addiction. We see all these back and forth channeling. I was actually going against addiction and trying to lose myself when I was a very young kid, and then I channeled that in. And I finally got obsessed and addicted to exercise, which ended up being the most healthy addiction I could ever have, because I had so much energy. It allowed me to calm myself down, get myself physically sharper, and in that process made me mentally sharper. So I always say that I'm a big believer, if you feel anxious or depressed or whatever, if you're not getting active and moving and raising your heart rate, get excited, do something fun, but be careful, because every single plane, emotional, physical, spiritual, you can get too extreme to one or the other. And without that balance, and again, that's because, when you say philosophical, you're asking me, you open up the can of worms. I chose the balance professor because I've been preaching the balance of art, creativity, imagination, physicality, kindness, purpose. And that's where, that's how I launched my podcast ultimately. And I think I've shared this with you before. My Imagine Fitting podcast is dedicated to my late nephew, who we lost to addiction, and my purpose in life. And I know you have a strong focus and purpose in life is to empower others to improve their lives, improve their quality of life, and pull out that purpose, because everybody's got a God-given talent.
Wonderful, Greg. Yeah, going deep is important. And you basing your podcast about, is your nephew, you said?
Yes.
Being lost to addiction. I mean, how close were you and I to meeting our maker at young ages by accident, or by depression, by being in the wrong place at the wrong time? And we've made it through. And, it's our time to continue to learn, but to also give back, to also recall things that we've learned along the way, in hopes that other people, our peers, younger people, older people, can gain something from this. And so I think what you're doing is commendable.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to jump over to some philosophers that some people will know of. And if you don't, I encourage you to find out more about some of these philosophers. So Soren Kierkegaard, Simone, female, Simone de Beauvoir, Jean-Paul Sartre, Friedrich Nietzsche, and these people are all associated with 19th and 20th century European philosophy, emphasis on the human subject. In the 20th century, the term existentialism was coined. So what's this all about? Well, people are always looking to categorize their era. What makes it different? What are the questions of their era? And if you're a person in the 20th century with a curious mind and you're reading up on things, ancient Greek philosophers, Roman philosophers, anyone that lived before you, your antecedents, you might realize that they were dealing with some same questions. Why is humanity so bent on destroying itself? Why is militarism, if you were in Europe, 1800s, 1900s, every 20 to 30 years, another war comes through, and that goes back 1,000 years. What's this all about? Why are we trying to destroy each other? What's the meaning we can get out of this? Now, the wars are over in the 1940s, post-World War II. Where's the meaning for our lives? Okay, what do? We don't have to fight the evil forces of the world right now, but now we have to do what we can to raise ourselves, raise our family, survive, and not be bored, not have apathy, these types of things. And so they developed this philosophy of existentialism, which is some of the terms that they came up with: existential crisis, angst, courage, and freedom. All these were questions that they wanted to tap into. And I think that some of this stuff is very helpful in determining what we can do with our lives, and how we can handle the absurdity and the incomprehensibility of the universe. So look up existentialism. It'll put you on the path to answering some of these questions and living an authentic life despite all of the incomprehensibility and the absurdity. Over to Greg for his thoughts on this.
Now, yeah, okay, I'll take you back, and it's always easy to frame it with my reference of my experience and my story. So I remember moving to Chicago from Dayton, Ohio when I was 21 years old. My brain's not fully developed. Nobody told me that. I go to this big city. I decide I want to be a creative guy. I want to work in ad agencies. I want to be one of those guys that are playing around and shooting a Nerf basketball in the hoop in the office and coming up with great ideas and just like, yeah, this is what I call work. Yeah. And, and I remember taking the subway train to Chicago, in Chicago. And I had to go north. And of course I get on the platform and I go south. And I remember like being in that train all of a sudden and both feeling like super excited and empowered going to my first job that I kind of landed. But I end up like the very first day, I still didn't know what I was doing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I asked somebody on the train. I'm freaking out. I feel like it's like the end of the world because I'm going to be late for my first day of work. And I'm like, what a rookie mistake, right? So I correct that. But then over the years, as I get, I learn that. I learn those platforms. I learn the direction, right? Through mistakes, and you're like, okay, I won't do that again. And during that time, I was around 20, I was only around 23 years old when I found myself, and don't ask me how this came about, but I just got really almost fatigued about the constant, as you mentioned, these warring egos of Palestine and Israel, Middle East situation. So as you said, right, we got through World War II, all the evils, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But there's all these lines in the sand that people tend to still want to draw based on their perception of, their prophet talking about, godlike energy or God, and that their prophet message is better than the other person's, right? It's more respectable. It's more what to follow, blah, blah, blah. I just got really tired of living in a civilized world. And this was in this is like 1980, at that point, 80, 85, 86. I'm 23 years old. I don't know nothing. I want to know what the world was like before the big top 5 religions we know. Christianity, right? Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam.
Judaism.
Yeah, exactly. And I just okay, how'd the world operate? And this is what took me to Joseph Campbell. And he basically mentions, I hear some recordings. I actually went to the library and I got some tapes about him being interviewed. And I was like, I just want to know. So gets fascinated as a young boy in upstate New York and American Indians, totem poles, all that kind of stuff. And he dug deeper and became basically the leading expert on mythology. And when we went to the moon in 1969, which my father actually worked on that space program, was part of that, was a participant in that, making us get to the moon. There's a photograph that Joseph Campbell shows. The first time a photograph is taken of the Earth, this blue marble, this beautiful existence, right? And he says that, all the geological findings from around the world, okay, of all the first civilizations, when you strip it away before those top 5s that really came about, whatever, that all these geological finds were the earliest communication of, say, cave drawings or cups or bowls or hunting tools to survive, whatever you call it. And that they were practicing the same kinds of rituals. These people were on the other sides of the planet. And it was proven that they were practicing the same kind of rituals, honoring Mother Earth and Father Sky, basically, okay? And it wasn't until these warring tribes began to be mobile and they run into each other and they're like, okay, you're the enemy, so I'm going to dominate and enslave. And then those who dominated enslaved them, used them for their purpose. And then those who enslaved, their God or their prophets were their saving grace to try to keep their dignity to humanity. And so ever since then, it's been these, right, warring tribes bumping into each other. And now we got to a place where it's like by 1969, we see this picture of this planet. And Joseph Campbell goes, okay, if we don't look, if you look at that blue marble from up there, you can't see lines in the sand. This is like humanity. Now we've come to a place where in 1987, just before he passed away, he said, we are under the potential that we are going to, with continuous religious infighting, going back to your point of, right, this dominance, this people hell-bent on destroying each other and trying to comprehend what are really humanity in this one world Earth. Now we come to the 21st century and we have the knowledge, the technology to realize what exactly is going on. And we still seem not to be able to find any kind of uniformity in a purpose and a cause. I can't explain it. But Campbell warned in 87, we are basically on the brink of this continuous religious infighting, thinking that one person has the better answer than the other, to really end our existence on this planet through either nuclear arms to self-destruction or the environmental cult, whatever we call that we know now, where we kind of have an idea of this, whatever. But hey, listen, the planet's going to be fine. Human beings, not so much. Yeah. So, and from a context of like existentialism and trying to say like that bigger picture, it's a tough, I don't know if you say pill to swallow. it's a tough pill to even find that it exists with people in their lives and their, you've got your mental capacity, you've got your curiosity levels, right? Some people are, I feel that I'm blessed. I'm sure you are too, Sifu, that we were given the tools and the ability to be talking from a level of what we're talking right now, exchanging. And it's like, that is a blessing. And just like I'm going to try to show that person, don't do that crunch over there because you have a situation that you don't realize that you're going to do worse damage. Don't go over to that neighbor right now because you're not in a good state. This could blow up in a negative way. That being said, I don't know any answers. And I'm coming to a point truly that if they say, you hear they say life is is it the Buddhist? I can't exactly. Life is, you ever heard the term life is sorrowful? And if you can't accept those three words, you're going to have a really hard time. Now, the challenge is to find the beauty in between all the sorrows of the world. And that seems like a pretty logical thing. And for far as I'm concerned, I do my best to try to find those joys in between the sorrows. And I do my best also for self-preservation and my fellow human being, my brothers. I want to try to create some joy that can be shared to show that it's possible not to be on that continual warring, I want mine, I got to have mine. So I think we're in a very transformative time in history. And again, my three words right now for going forward are grateful, focus, and fortitude. And that's how I kind of run my day these days.
Hi, this is Sifu Slim, author of The Aging Athlete. In this book, you're going to get to hear about two different groups of former high-performance athletes. One group, which is made up of 90% of the former athletes, does not do physical activity on a regular basis and tends to suffer the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. The other group, which is made up of 10% of the former athletes, is doing physical activity on a regular basis and tends to thrive through the aging process, or at least has a better chance at coping with the aging process. We could have taken these folks to a lab and done all kinds of tests on them. Instead, we slowed them down and sat them down and asked them in their own words to describe why they're wired the way they are, so that we all, former athletes and non-athletes, can use some of their inspirational and motivational and mindset lessons in our own lives. I hope you pick up a copy today. You can go to theagingathlete.com. And when you have a chance to read it, I'd love to hear back from you to find out what your thoughts are on the stories of these aging athletes. I'm going to play off of that, Greg. So a big part of the group dynamic of our country, our municipality, our team was all this team. Yes, follow what the program was and don't go against the team, because if you're not with us, you're against us. We've heard this type of thing in politics before, but it's the same thing that coaches were saying. It's us against the crosstown rival, and we're going to do it this way, and you got to be part of the team. But what if we're being inauthentic? What if we're causing undue harm? What if we're cheating? All these types of things. And that's where that fortitude and doing the right thing comes into play. So if you've got the girl in high school, or you want to get the girl in high school, you're a guy, you're a hetero guy, and it's all about winning. It's not about being an upstanding young individual who's working on doing the right thing, working on authenticity, being a caring person, all these things that used to sound sort of weak, and they still do in some people's eyes. I really think that the focus has to be on the virtue, which comes from vir, V-I-R, the man or the person, developing the integrity to do the right thing, no matter what the team says, no matter what the overlying ethos is of the thought of the planet. If you really think that you know that what you're doing is right and what the team is doing is wrong, you can step aside. They can put you in jail. They can kick you off the team. But if you want to live with yourself from age 15, sophomore year of high school, for as long as you live, whether it's a year or multiple decades, the ability to choose and the fortitude to choose doing the right thing is something that I think we need to emphasize more. And part of that is freedom. Part of that is telling the coach no, and that you want to sit this one out for a certain reason, not being beholden to this team ethic. And so this questions the group dynamic, and I think it's okay to question the group dynamic. Over to Greg for his thoughts.
I don't know. I don't run my world. I run my perception of my existence on 4 planes. And this is also another gift from Campbell. And that is community ethos, the spiritual plane, understanding the mystery of life, trying to comprehend and understand there is a mystery of life, and then the cosmos. I'm happen to be an Aquarian, okay? I don't put all my eggs in one basket, okay? But I've been such an individual player. I understand. I'm such an individual mindset person, and there's a lot more people than me than not. And for me to become a team player, I found in my experiences through the best circumstance, like you said, which game do you want to be in? Maybe I have to start my own game, and I'm the coach. That being said, I believe my game, even if it's done on an individual plane and level, but if I have intention to share it with multiple people, then I'm constantly working on a team, and I'm being the work ethic, the focus, the commitment, and identifying. Some people, let's admit it, some people are leaders, some people are followers, some people love to be given a specific carve out, like, oh, you're great with this, and everybody knows it, and it makes them excited and proud. And like, yes, there's a role for everyone. But I'm not such a great person to ask about teamwork, and my only experiences in teams have come through between this not so wonderful experience as a kid playing recreational kickball or something on the schoolyard and being picked after a girl. So I'm like one of the last guys, and a girl gets picked because she's more physically adept and can be better than me. And so that one did something to my, initially. And then as an artist, because my essence, I'm an artist, I felt that I was never understood. I think I see too much. In that tense, I feel too much. And then that means because of my character, I tend to care too much. And if I care about this team with the society I live around, that means I'm all in. And I will go to extremes on an individual level to feel that I can contribute to maybe these individuals that love to be on teams, or aren't comfortable being on teams like myself. But I believe there's, when go back and talk about gifts, right? When you have a young child, I think the duty of the parents, I never had kids, but this is my theory, that I just know this because my father was able to see my gifts and my enthusiasm and try to provide me tools to nurture it when those things are going off in your eyeballs, you're just all excited. To nurture that, I think people are too quick to just accept one particular game that's available right now and never realize that they can create their own game. They can create their own destiny or purpose. And believe it or not, even though I'm an individual, I found that the more I'm an individual and I'm nurturing these traits in myself that I have to both support, encourage, control, regulate, manage on a day-to-day, and as only with my age of wisdom, where I have been realizing it is an art form but one thing I know for sure, it's always difficult. The one thing I know for sure, absolutely sure, Sifu, is that when I am doing the best for me and with a purpose of ultimately now passing it forward, and I've led up to this point of like, now it's not my destination. It is definitely my journey, where I'm celebrating every moment that I realize that I'm exactly where I need to be, which is a blessing for me. And people are attracted to my energy of my content and my enthusiasm for myself, for that preciousness, and realizing that I happen to be in a job, in a career, that people, that physical plane it seems that they can't. I give them an access road. I give them that ability to be a team player on their own individual team, and then realizing that, right, that there's key positions that we have to do them all. And then when you can do that, you can basically walk onto any team and understand that, okay, this is my particular mission right now. And, under circumstances or controlled or not controlled, if you have any control over it, you do the best you can with the opportunities you have, or you create your own.
The athlete who comes to mind, and I've mentioned him in a few other recent interviews, is Herschel Walker. And he was a person who started out in life with a lot of challenges. He had a speech impediment. He was overweight. He didn't know what to do. A young African American in the South. He was lost, and he had the fortitude to know that he wanted something. He didn't know how to get it, but he said he did a lot of these right things: physical training, working hard in school, learning martial arts, learning track and field, improving with football. And he did that to a degree that's almost unheard of, taking someone he's got a good bone structure, but he probably didn't know that when he was a young guy because he was so heavy. And he put himself through this training, and he didn't let anything stop him. I don't believe he did it with an ego domination way of thinking. He did it in many interviews I've seen. He comes across as humble. I'm not saying he's a 100% person. There's things on his Wikipedia page that I'm sure he's regretful of. But when you look at what he did, and he kept going with his 1,000 push-ups, a few thousand sit-ups, his handstand push-ups, his running, his studying, his improving, and then running for politics now at age 59 through 60 something. Pretty impressive guy. And he didn't let anything, any trades that he had in football, any setbacks he had with his speech impediment, leaving college early and going pro, he never let any of that stuff stop him. And I think that's a good way to look at a successful life and a balanced life, is don't let the crowd drag you down. Don't let one individual you interact with drag you down. Do your own thing every day. It could take you 10 years, it could take you 50 years, whatever the case. Doing the right thing every day on your plan is satisfying. It's invigorating. It helps us to survive, and it helps us to have a chance at thriving. So thriving, of course, is the ultimate goal, but almost no one stays in the thrive zone. The more you hear a successful person and you look deeply into their last few decades, you realize all of the setbacks. Sylvester Stallone, lots of setbacks. Arnold Schwarzenegger, huge amount of setbacks. And the females, the same thing. Lindsey Vonn, the skier, all kinds of rebuilding her body with bionic parts and stem cell and prolotherapy. All of these great athletes, you can find an incredible amount of setbacks. Over to Greg for final thoughts, and also please share a little bit about thebalancedprofessor.com. So 2 things: your thoughts on what I said, and a little bit about how to connect with you.
You know what? It basically, I believe, the accessibility and the openness to discover. When you think you know it all, that's when you really went somewhere south. You're not, it's a continuum. It's like I always tell people tell me like, oh, you're a really good teacher. I said, because ultimately I'm a very curious student, and I'm constantly trying to learn from not only what I learn from what I don't know, but I'm trying to learn more about what I can do with what I do know. And in terms of it's kind of like being in the moment, right? When I just mentioned to you, it's like, it's the journey. We hear that 1,000 times, like it's a journey, not the destination. So you can really not be within your journey unless you're kind of starting from the ultimate point, which is, if you think about it, when you're first born, right? What happens when the doctor grabs your butt, slaps you, you take your first breath? The breath is one of probably the primary things. If you just seemed overwhelmed, like, oh, I think I'm doing what I want to do, and blah, 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 and you're like, you're having some success, but there's challenges and blah, 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 and I'm not quite sure. It's like, wait, stop. Take a breath, quiet the mind, be in tune with that now. There's no more ultimate, right? What do we know, right? We can't live without food for more than a week. We can't live with water for more than a few days, but you can't live without a breath in 60 seconds or 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So that trying to bring it down while, society obviously today is just ripping through. There's just no time to, so many people, there's just so much stuff coming at people these days that if you don't consciously make time to just quiet it down, and you're talking about trying to like be in your journey and being in the now, there is no, to realize there is no past and future. There's just this moment. I'm speaking to Sifu right now. I am having new revelations. I'm churning up old revelations, old realizations, and how can I practically put them into better play, faced and dealing with things that go on. And my purpose here is always, obviously, because through my own self-discovery, my own challenges, and the people who mentored me and given me little advice, if it's authors I've never met or people that are in my life, to try to pass it forward. So, for me, I find it the ultimate prize in being able to truly own my gifts, my faults, my misunderstandings, my new fortunes, my X paths that I've took that regrettable, just to know that you can't rush the future, and you definitely can't rewind back to the past. So that being said, I don't get really philosophical with my clients. When I first start with my clients, I let them unfold and allow them to get comfortable enough to be inquisitive, to play off the energy that I give them. And I try to be accepting and just an open ear. And then when they're able, they seem to get comfortable with me, and they start asking like, well, what do you do? What have you done? And that's how I probably was mentored back in the day as well. So it's an honor and privilege to be in the fitness world, helping people like my man Sifu here. I want to thank you for having me on. You can reach out to me. I live in Dayton, Ohio. I still have a California cell phone number. I was out there for quite a while. You can find me at thebalancedprofessor.com. I'm also on my new Facebook page at Greg, Greg, and then the letters IMGN for my short for Imagine, and Jankowski. And I have, of course, you can find me on the Imagine Fitting In podcast, available on YouTube and on Apple and Spotify. So please also, you can hit me up on The Balanced Professor on Instagram. Again, I wish everyone the best on their journey, continued growth and success, and take that gratefulness, that focus, and that fortitude, and put it into action. So Sifu, I thank you so much for your time and allowing me to be a guest.
Wonderful, Greg. So as Ed, work your program, be all that you can be, and pay it forward. That's so important. Pay it forward when you have some time. Pick up the slack and help somebody else out. Help them get to where they want to go. Share a little bit about your story, and that helps you. And it all comes back to you. What comes around goes around. So I'm Sifu Slim at sifuslim.com. Please give us a thumbs up and like. Let us know your comments and questions down below, and we'll see you in the next podcast. And we're both looking for guests. So if you have any interesting people out there, please shoot us an email through our websites and let us know some people you think we should interact with on our respective podcasts. We'll look forward to connecting again, Greg. It's been wonderful, and big aloha from Santa Barbara, California.